the first to see the sunrise. My roots are in the ocean deep. I am the island. I am the island. I am a thing of beauty. My waters, they run deep and sweet. I am the island. I am the island, oh yeah. I am the island. I am the island, I am, I am.
People have been coming to this island for thousands of years. The Indians called it Pematic, the sloping land. The first French explorers named it the Isle de Montdésert, the island of the Bear Mountains. Later, the French called it La Cadie, perhaps from the Algonquin Indian name, Cadie, the place. Eventually, the French name stuck. The island is now called Mount Desert. Its national park is Acadia. 15 miles long, 12 miles across, Mount Desert Island stands as a sentinel along the main coast. Its mountains, a string of distant blue stones rising from the sea. It is the highest headland on the U.S. Atlantic coast. But before it had its present shape, thousands of years before anyone called it Acadia, or Mount Desert Island, or Pematic, it lay under an immense, slow-moving ice sheet, 8,000 or 9,000 feet thick. The ice pressed and ground the granite down as it moved slowly south. Gradually, as the ice age ended, the ice retreated, exposing the bare granite. The slow grinding had shaped the rock, rounding the mountains. Steep-sided valleys ran north and south where the ice had gouged them out. The valleys filled with water, creating a series of deep, clear lakes between the mountains. In the middle of the island, the deepest valley lay beneath sea level. The ocean flooded it, forming a fjord which cuts the island almost in half. Later, grasses, berries, and flowers came to the island. Spruce, fir, birch, and maple grew in the valleys and along the mountain slopes. Deer, bear, beaver, and moose roamed its woods and meadows. Chickadees, sparrows, red-winged blackbirds, and multitudes of other birds lived in the woods and wetlands. High in the air above them, hunting ospreys and bald eagles circled. Still, with all this life, much of Mount Desert's granite face remained bare with large expanses of exposed pink rock.
No one knows when people first came to the island. No one knows what was its name.
More than 2,000 years ago, the Abenaki Indians lived here. And like so many of the later generations of Penobscot and Passamaquoddy Indian tribes that called it Pematic, they came to this island for its unique combination of mountains, woodlands, and ocean. Paddling their bark canoes from their permanent settlements on the Penobscot and other rivers, they set up summer camps on the island's shores. Here they fished offshore and dug clams in the intertidal flats. They hunted in the woodlands and the fields. They picked wild berries, the strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries in the meadows and on the mountainsides. Much of the food they dried or smoked to save for winter provisions. Evidence of these early summer camps remains in shell heaps such as those on Manchester Point on the fjord, now called Somme Sound. Some of the Indians may have stayed throughout the year, but most of them returned to their inland camps in the fall in time to harvest their spring planting of corn and beans. The Indians were here in September of 1604 when the first European explorers arrived. They may have watched from the headland as Samuel de Champlain's boat crossed the bay from the east and ran aground on the offshore ledge that is exposed at low tide. The bay is now called Frenchman's Bay in honor of their arrival. 9 years later, a group of French Jesuits landed near present-day Beau Harbor, intending to build a settlement. But the Indians persuaded them to come to Somme Sound to meet their chief, Astiku. There, taken by the beauty of the place and the chance to convert the nearby natives, they settled. But they did not stay long. A few months later, an English warship attacked and captured the Frenchmen.
I saw freedom for a long time, but now things are on the move. Changes in the wind.
For the next 150 years, while the French and the English squabbled about who'd control this part of the continent, the Indians had this island pretty much to themselves, coming in the summers as they had for so long before the Europeans arrived.
People come every day. I wonder if they'll stay.
In 1761, the first permanent English settlers arrived. These new settlers fished the rich waters of the Gulf of Maine and the Grand Banks off of Newfoundland. They built ships for fishing and trade. They farmed and logged wood.
Abram Soames apparently came up from Gloucester, Massachusetts in 1750 first, and he came back in 1761, and he and Mr. Gott were the first settlers here, and they came to see the rich farming area, the many trees for timbers for ships and also for barrel staves. They stayed here until spring when the ice went out. Then they went back to Gloucester, and in that fall of 1761, they came back with their wives. And James Richardson settled over in Somme Sound, and Abram Soames settled here in Somesville. And his wife was the one who called it Twixt the Hills, which seems interesting. We think of him as getting the credit, but actually it's his wife.
Somesville is a classic New England village of white clapboard and black shutter houses. Red geraniums decorate its stone walls in the summer, and a small stream feeds the mill pond at its center. Some of those who came after Abraham Soames began to quarry the island's pink granite, which soon became famous throughout the country.
Now they're mining my bones, they're taking my stones. They caught me away, they're sailing away, far, far away.
Because Hall Quarry was developed by a man named Cyrus Hall, who came here and found the beautiful pink granite, which the island is famous. And at that time, he had 1,000 people employed. Imagine having 1,000 people in one little village like Hall Quarry. And he took out the granite. Four-masted schooners came up, I can remember as a boy, going down and playing on the schooners. And they come up and go out and sail out to sea.
And I would watch those, I'd watch them sluice the blocks down in the holes of the boats. Yeah, my father worked at the quarry. He was boss quarryman. And my brother Mac ran the engine that hoisted the stone. And my brother Bill and Jim were quarrymen.
Much of the stone, the granite, in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City came from here. And of course the Mint in Washington was made from Hall Quarry, and many buildings in the capital and in New York City.
And it was a wonderful sight to see.
Eventually, as new building materials replaced granite, the cutting stopped. Today, island youngsters use the abandoned quarries as swimming holes.
The artists, they capture me, the writers, they write of me, they love my beauty. I am the island.
One of the biggest changes in island life, though, began in the mid-19th century, when an entirely new kind of explorer discovered Mount Desert. By the 1840s, painters and writers from the cities were coming to Maine, searching the coast for new subjects. They came to Mount Desert Island, and taken by its beauty, by its combination of mountains, woodland, and ocean, they began to paint and write about it. Mount Desert was an island of small, unassuming villages. These new visitors rented rooms from the farmers and the fishermen of the many villages, including the village of Eden, later renamed Bar Harbor. And when these artists returned to the cities, they showed their paintings and writings, and they spoke of this beautiful place and its unique character. When they came back, they brought others who wanted to experience what they had described. They called themselves rusticators, in honor of the simple life here. These early rusticators were intellectuals, and their greatest pleasures were walking the island's mountain and lowland trails, and talking. In 1896, a Harvard professor wrote in the Boston Evening Transcript that Bar Harbor was the scene of the best conversation to be found anywhere in America. Walking and talking had become an art form. Soon, the summer population began to grow significantly. In response, the islanders added on to their homes, or built entire new boarding houses. Bar Harbor grew and changed with these arrivals, as did Southwest Harbor, Northeast Harbor, Seal Harbor, and so many other villages. As these rusticators began to want their surroundings less and less rustic, the islanders built hotels. Over time, they became bigger and fancier. The Claremont in Southwest Harbor, the Kimball House, Astico Inn, and Rock End Hotel in Northeast Harbor. More than 17 hotels rose in Bar Harbor, including the Rodick House. It could hold more than 600 guests, serve 750 at meals, and drew as many as 3,000 people to its twice-a-week dances.
A change is in the wind. People dance and stay in fancy inns, lovely inns.
The summer visitors took carriage excursions to other villages, often taking the famous 22-mile road from Bar Harbor to Northeast Harbor. They sailed the waters surrounding Mount Desert and picnicked on the small nearby islands. They canoed the lakes. They rode the cog rail to the top of Green Mountain, now called Cadillac. There, they spent the night at the Green Mountain Hotel for the sunrise and the breathtaking panorama of the entire island and surrounding ocean. A favorite activity was a carriage ride to the Jordan Pond House on the 22-mile road. It offered a view of the expanse of Jordan Pond and the Bubbles, the two mountains at its north end. The pond house had once been a farm, but in 1895 its owners, the McIntyres, began serving refreshments to the rusticators and offering rowing boats and horses for hire. Soon, it was common practice to ride one's cut-under carriage to the Jordan Pond House for its famous tea and popovers on the lawn. After one such afternoon excursion, a visiting European countess was heard to have remarked, "I never can remember whether I drove over in a cut-under for a popover or in a popover for a cut-under." The tradition of afternoon tea and popovers continues today. Though the original building burned in 1982, 2 years later a new building opened on the same site, and islanders and summer visitors alike delight in summer afternoons with pond house popovers while they enjoy the view of Jordan Pond and the Bubbles.
Tea at the pond house on sunny afternoons. Live in a cottage with 36 rooms. Formal gardens by beautiful shores. Summer on the island. Live for the summer on the island. Enjoy summer on the island.
Eventually, this life was not enough for the rusticators. Before the turn of the century, they had begun to turn their island life into something much more genteel and refined. They began to build their own cottages, 30, 40, and 60-room mansions with clipped lawns and formal gardens. These buildings retained the name the islanders had given to the earlier and much smaller houses they had rented to the summer visitors. Eventually, more than 200 cottages lined the shore from Bar Harbor to Somme Sound. By the turn of the century, the island had become the premier summer resort for America's wealthy. Here the Vanderbilts, Rockefellers, and Astors summered at their cottages. The Fords, Pulitzers, and Carnegies relaxed and enjoyed the island's resources. They often came by train, the Bar Harbor Express running out of Philadelphia, or they took an overnight coastal steamer from Boston to Rockland, where they boarded the sidewheeler Mount Desert, and later the J.T. Morse, for the run to Mount Desert Island.
The most exciting thing about coming here as a child was the trip up from Boston, because we stayed in Boston in June and it was hot and muggy and horrible. And then we drove through the North End and got on the Boston and Maine, the train, and I went to sleep, of course. And in the morning we woke up at the Mount Desert Ferry over across the bay, across Frenchman's Bay. And it was just a new world. It was wonderful. It was fresh and green and beautiful. And we came across the bay in the ferry and had a wonderful breakfast. And here we were up here for the summer. And it was something that I looked forward to all the time, all winter long.
These summer people did not limit themselves to enjoying only the island's natural resources. They also brought their own social world with them. They held yachting parties aboard their large sail and steamboats. Joseph Pulitzer's yacht Liberty was 300 feet long and boasted both a music room and a gymnasium. Pulitzer brought the New York Symphony to perform at private parties. Many mornings the Boston Symphony played Strauss waltzes by the pool at the Bar Harbor Club. Afternoons were spent with tennis matches and teas. Evenings offered gala balls and elegant dinner parties.
One of the most fascinating things happened to me was the day I got the autograph of Sir Montague Norman, the governor of the Bank of England. I had tea and crumpets with him at the Coles Estate in Bar Harbor. In the afternoon, I saw him go out on the J.P. Morgan Corsair. And on that boat, a ship, there was at least 85% of the wealth in the country there, the Morgans, the Vanderbilts, DuPonts, and Rockefellers. And it had been quite a thing if that boat had sunk that day.
These were the days when lobsters could be had for the picking at low tide along the shore, when they sold for $3 a dozen. Lobster Newburg almost invariably appeared on the menus of these posh gatherings, and when people began to serve alcohol at their parties, the art of talking began to fade. As one Bar Harbor dowager remarked, after the second cocktail, there's no such thing as conversation. Unquestionably, Bar Harbor was the center of Island's high society summer life. It was here that most of the rich and the powerful gathered. Summers, the foreign embassies moved their offices to Bar Harbor from Washington, D.C. It was at the Bar Harbor Club that Philadelphian E.T. Stotesbury announced that he had finally achieved his lifelong ambition. I have today received a letter from my financial advisor, he said, telling me that I am worth $100 million. Bar Harbor had indeed changed from its early days of rusticators and their simple pleasures.
They've loved me for so long, they won't ignore me or forget me. They've loved me for so long.
Soon, some of the summer residents began to worry that the island might become overdeveloped, that commercial interests might destroy its character. They saw that its uniqueness and beauty made it vulnerable to those who would keep on building more and more houses and businesses. They saw that this would slowly undermine and destroy the very things that people had always come to Mount Desert for. In 1901, Charles Eliot, the president of Harvard, called together a group of summer residents to form the Hancock County Trustees for Mount Desert Island. Under the leadership of George B. Dorr, they accepted gifts and eventually bought island land to hold in public trust. This land eventually became Acadia National Park. In 1913, they presented their holdings, about 5,000 acres, to the federal government. In 1916, it officially became Lafayette National Park, the first national park east of the Mississippi. John D. Rockefeller, Jr., summer resident in Seal Harbor, became very involved with helping create the park. Eventually, he gave more than 10,000 acres of his own land to it, almost one-third of the present park holdings. Rockefeller particularly enjoyed the island's peacefulness, and he was not happy when the island-wide ban on cars ended in 1915. So, in 1917, he began to build a network of carriage roads on his own land and the newly established park as alternative routes for island travel. He took great delight in the ongoing work and often went out on foot to oversee the construction. Eventually, 2 gatehouses guarded the entrances where these roads joined the public motor roads, and the new roads with their 16 bridges meandered across 57 miles of the eastern part of the island in a seemingly aimless pattern. But there was a reason for where the roads went. Rockefeller laid them out to take advantage of the variety of the island's beautiful terrain. One road climbs the bare slopes of Sergeant Mountain, overlooking Upper Hadlock Pond, and then drops quickly to wind among the trees along the pond shore. These roads ring lakes, climb to the summits of small mountains, and open sudden vistas to the traveler. Where before only trails had cut into the interior parkland, these new roads opened up much of the island to those who wished to travel by horse or carriage. And while much of the island was still accessible only by narrow trails, suddenly whole new expanses of the island could be reached and enjoyed with relative ease. In 1929, with the addition of land on Schoodic Peninsula, east of Mount Desert Island on the mainland, Lafayette's park name was changed to Acadia National Park, recognizing the early name for the region. By this time, Bar Harbor's prominence had begun to decline. The income tax and the Great Depression had weakened the summer community's financial underpinnings. Though it continued to enjoy a large summer population, by World War II, its extravagant heyday was over.
I'm at ease, I'll wait and see what's in store for me. I'll feel the tides, I'll watch the sea. I'll live what changes come over me.
The fall of 1947, after a dangerously hot, dry summer, the island began to burn. The fire started near Bar Harbor and whipped up by 80-mile-an-hour winds. It burned for 5 days before it was under control. By the time it was out, 9,000 acres of the island had burned. The French newspaper Le Figaro mistakenly claimed on its front page that the fire had been started by local peasants unhappy with having their island occupied by America's wealthy aristocracy. Actually, the fire was started quite accidentally. But more than half of Bar Harbor and many of its cottages were leveled, and though Mount Desert's woodlands have slowly regenerated themselves since then, few cottages were rebuilt. Though a number of the beautiful cottages still grace Bar Harbor, it has never returned to its earlier prominence and glory. Other villages, though, were spared the fire's ravages. Some, particularly Seal Harbor and Northeast Harbor, have continued the tradition of elegant summer homes. Many of those whose families began summering on the island in the last century still come to Mount Desert. Some of their cottages with their expanses of lawn are visible from the maple line roads that wind through the villages. Other cottages are less conspicuous, to be glimpsed only through the trees. Some can be seen only from the water, perched on high cliffs or in sheltered coves. Today, islanders enjoy a kind of life closely connected to the life Mount Desert has offered them since they first started coming here. Many of them fish. Villages such as Bass Harbor and Southwest Harbor have sizable fleets of lobster boats and scallop draggers.
These people, they do many things. The fishermen, they still go out.
I'm the sixth generation of my family that's been a lobster fisherman.
Their pot buoys still hang from the eaves of their bait sheds, each fisherman's buoy different from all the others.
I fish on the average of about 600 to 600 a year. I may have as many as 700 to 750 in the fall and maybe only 400 in the summertime.
Some islanders dig for clams in the flats at low water, spending the long hours between tides turning the intertidal mud with their clam rakes.
These people, they do many things. They build the boats to sail the seas.
Islanders, so long connected with the sea, still build boats to go out to do their fishing. Many builders continue to build in wood, keeping the tradition started when fishermen went to their fishing grounds under sail.
Well, when I first started building boats, it was all wood. And of course I learned to build wooden boats, and I built them for a number of years before fiberglass and other materials came into being. And I just been building the wood so long that I just couldn't bring myself to building any other medium.
Many others use more modern methods, building in aluminum or steel, or in fiberglass. Most of the building, though, is of pleasure boats. The island has become famous among boaters for its many and excellent boat yards. Some yards, such as the Hinckley Company in Southwest Harbor, are world famous. Here, the skilled island craftsmen build yachts from 40 to 60 feet long, some costing well over $1 million. Some of these boats leave Mount Desert's yards to sail around the world. In turn, many sailors come to Acadia to enjoy the excellent sailing its waters offer and to enjoy the beauties of the island.
Best sailing I've ever done. A number of factors combine to make this really unique sailing up here. Probably the most important is the cold temperature of the water combines with the hot land and almost always produces a nice strong wind in the summer, and that's quite rare on the East Coast, particularly if you're used to sailing down in Long Island Sound or Buzzards Bay. Plus you have the mountains of Mount Desert Island rising right out of the sea. That's just like the Virgin Islands. And you have a little fog thrown in there to test your navigational skills.
These people, they do many things. They love the water. They love to sail the ocean breeze.
Many yachtsmen have made Mount Desert home port. Northeast Harbor has become a haven for yachtsmen, and on summer evenings it is filled with large, elegant sailboats and motor yachts. Several days a week, its yacht members race in the waters outside its harbor. These sailors, whether they're based here or cruising the coast, enjoy visiting the small harbors and islands that surround Mount Desert. The Porcupine Islands ringing Bar Harbor. Black and Gotts Island just offshore from Bass Harbor. The Great Cranberry Isles, which protect the oceanside approaches to the island. Many are drawn to Somme Sound with its narrow entrance, strong currents, and winds. Some think it offers the most challenging sailing on the East Coast. Valley Cove, along the eastern edge of the Sound, offers a deep anchorage, where sailors often stop for an afternoon picnic.
Even a bad day's a good day. Misty walks along the shore path, or remember the old ways.
There are foggy days, sometimes many of them during Mount Desert's summers. Most sailors use the time to enjoy the island, stretching their legs with walks through the villages and along the trails, or visiting the small museums such as Northeast Harbor's Old Firehouse Museum or Little Cranberry's Islesford Museum, which record much of the early life of Mount Desert and the nearby islands. Mount Desert Island and Acadia National Park see more than 4 million visitors a year, and these visitors can enjoy many of the same activities that generations of earlier summer visitors had been able to do. Bal Harbour remains the largest island community and the center of much of the island's activity. The Blue Nose Ferry connects Bal Harbour directly to Nova Scotia, and this is the destination of a number of cruise ships, including the QE2. Sailboats and motor launches offer day trips and short excursions for travelers who wish to see the islands from the water. Often these people see seals and bald eagles in addition to the other abundant sea and bird life. The Village Green in Bal Harbour is the setting for many art shows and crafts fairs. On certain summer evenings, open-air band concerts can be heard. And like Northeast and Southwest Harbors, Bal Harbour has its own summer music festival. Bal Harbour's mansions along Millionaire's Row show some of the town's earlier glory. Some of Bal Harbour's mansions are now inns, such as the Ledgelawn Inn, where many modern travelers enjoy staying during their visit. From here, they venture out to explore. Bass Harbor, with its fishing boats and houses nestled along the shore. Southwest Harbor's boatyards and its oceanarium, where they learn about the ocean and its life. Northeast Harbor's gardens, with their many rare azaleas and rhododendrons, as well as the splendor of flowers that flourish on Mount Desert. But the biggest attraction is not Bal Harbour or any of the other villages. It's the island itself, with its magnificence of lakes, woods, and bare granite mountains, and its surrounding ocean relentlessly beating against it. Many visitors first see Acadia from their cars, traveling to the top of Cadillac Mountain, the island's highest point. They look down on Bal Harbour and out to the Cranberry Isles. On clear days, they can see Mount Desert Rock, 20 miles offshore, where whales come to feed on the rich sea life. From the base of Cadillac, visitors often explore Acadia's Ocean Drive along the dramatic headlands of the island's eastern side, where the Indians first saw the Europeans arriving. They pass Sand Beach, favorite summer haven for sunbathers and the few who dare to brave the frigid Atlantic waters. Thunder Hole, where the sea dries into a narrow passage and shakes the ground with its thundering impact. Otter Head. Once the visitors have made their preliminary survey of the island, many of them explore Mr. Rockefeller's carriage roads, either by foot or by bicycle. Here, as he planned, they can travel throughout most of the eastern part of Acadia without ever seeing a car. Some travel the carriage roads the old way, by horse or carriage, starting at the Wildwood Stables near Seal Harbor. Many of them spend their time hiking Acadia's trails, which crisscross almost every part of the island. Those who come to hike are challenged by Acadia's mountains. They climb the precipice, a vertical trail which brings them up the sheer face of Champlain Mountain to more than 1,000 feet above the ocean. Or the Gorge Path, which carries them through a narrow, water-carved gorge and eventually leads to the 1,500-foot summit of Cadillac Mountain. the first spot in the United States to see the morning sun. Other trails take them through the woodlands and along the lakes. Here they can canoe or fish or watch the birds among the trees. Or they can simply sit and listen to the silence of Acadia. All of this is what they come to Acadia for, the combination of magnificence and simple beauty. These are the things that will keep people coming to Acadia.
I am the first to see the sunrise. My roots are in the ocean deep. I am the island. I am the island. I am. I am a thing of beauty. My waters, they run deep and sweet. I am the island.